Let's create something awesome, Game Devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 66 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with the best people in our industry to learn how they got started, the obstacles they face, and the tools they use for success. And now let's chat with today's featured guest, Henrique Olifiers. Oh, did I say that
right? Almost there. It took me a few years to get it right myself, so don't worry.
All right, Henrique, it's game time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's start.
Yes. He has been in the game industry for more than 30 years, working on web-based games, a massive multiplayer games, and social games. He is currently the CEO of the Bossa Studios, which are the makers of Surgeon Simulators, Monstermind, and I Am Bread. Now they're currently working on Worlds Adrift, a sandbox MMO with real-time physics where you can band together to build skyships and explore floating islands of a shadowed world. So go ahead, Henrique, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Oh, that was a very long time ago, Tony. I started in the early 80s. Well, I started even before that. When I got my first console, it was a Pong console. So that was probably 78 or 79. And as every kid that got a console back then, I got completely hooked up on it, right? And I couldn't wait to see more games and expand the horizons of what could be possible to do with games. So when I finally got my hands on a home computer in the 82 or 83, yeah, something like that, it was a ZX Spectrum. And as soon as I run out of the games to play on it, I started making my own and selling it to my friends. So I think I started as a game developer for sheer necessity to keep on playing. It's just that thing. I live in the third world country. It's like a remote town. I couldn't get hold of many games, and if I didn't want to get bored, I would have to make my own. And that was the start of it, like pushing bytes here and there in assembly language.
Well, how old were you when you were first making your game and selling it to your friends?
Oh, dude, I was still in school. I was probably 12, 13, something like that. Yeah.
That's crazy because even back then, the technology wasn't like big back then where you could just easily create a game, but you still make that effort using assembly to make a game and sell it to your friends. That's awesome right there.
I tried to make games in BASIC, but anyone who tried to use that programming language run out of options pretty fast. The performance on it was terrible, especially considering those machines run at 3.5 megahertz back then. So, yeah, I got pushed to deal with the hardware itself very fast. And we swapped it. The games were delivered on cassette tapes, which most people I haven't even seen one. That sounds like ancient technology these days, right?
I didn't even know games came in cassette tapes. How did you get your friends to buy it? Like, how did you advertise it? Do you remember how you marketed it, or you just like?
Yeah, I did. I went in. It was pretty much billboarding advertising. You know, when you go to a pub or a bar, there's those boards in the corner where people are announcing anything from meditation to job announcements and so on. So I would just put some copied Xerox advertisements there and say, I make games, I sell games, these are the games I have made, check it out. And actually, one of my best friends met me because of that. He saw one of the adverts, came to my house to buy some of the games, and we became friends. And the other day he made an interview. He gave an interview about the same kind of thing we are talking today. And through that interview, he reminded me what was the first game that I made because I had no recollection of it. And it was called James Lemonade Stand. Basically, it was a tycoon game where you will buy lemons and ice cubes and sugar, expecting that the next day will be a sunny day, so you will sell more lemonade, etc. It's a maths game, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, this is great motivation for the young kids that are still in school because it's never too early to start or too late to start. You just got to keep making games, keep learning and keep doing it. Now, to this day, what is your current main area of expertise?
Wow, that's a difficult one because I started as a developer first and mostly, right? And back in the day, you had to do everything because we were bedroom coders. So we had to deal with graphics, with programming, with sound, with gameplay, everything. So But I feel myself more and more fulfilled when I'm designing games, right? That's my personal passion. I love dealing with core game mechanics and what are the emotional aspects and emotional results of those mechanics in the player. But to be frank, I do very little of these days, right? I run a 50 people studio, which means that most of the time I'm helping other people uh, uh, do their job, achieve their dreams, rather than doing it myself.
So you're the CEO running 50 people, and what do you think is something we probably don't know about running a big company that we should know?
Well, everybody who is into games and has a dream to start a studio and start making their own games, um, I had a dream that when I started Bossa, I would be working on the games that I would like to make, right? That I would be making the games that I dream of making. And pretty soon became clear that I wouldn't be able to do that. In fact, my job became, let's make an environment with great people and enable them to make the games they want to make. And that became my job. So this is probably one of the biggest surprises, if you wish, in this journey, is that if you are serious about making games with teams, and you are the one to lead that enterprise, it's very likely that you will not be making the game yourself. You will just be surrounding yourself with people who are better than you and making sure that you are helping them in any way you can for them to do the games that they want to make.
Interesting. So you're not like technically making the game, but you're leading the vision. Are you leading the vision of the game at least?
Not anymore. Here at Bossa, we have a very specific way of doing games, which is not common in the industry at all. Let me explain you why. Um, we don't have a creative director, so to speak, or someone who dictates what the game should be like. What we have is every month we have a game jam of 48 hours. So every single month we stop for 2 days. We give the team a theme, and they split together into small teams of 5 or 6 people, each one of those teams, and they create games based on that theme. So every month we create 6, 7 games which we get to play, and we decide if they are worth going into production for real or not. This is how Surgeon Simulator, I Am Bread, Worlds Adrift, all these games came to be. So they came from anywhere in the studio. Anyone can come up with this idea and create a game which is fun. And the reality is that 90% of these ideas that we come up with, they are not very good once we get to play with them. They look great on paper, they look great in our heads, but when we make them playable, they don't really play the way we imagined they would. And that taught us to be very humble in terms of uh, ideas, in that most ideas, they don't pan out. So this is why I'm no longer heading games anymore, because the game can be from anywhere, the core idea. What I do though is in a daily basis interact with the teams and help them see things that they're probably not seeing, because I have a little bit more experience given all the years that I have been in the market to be able to nudge them here and there when I can see that something could be going wrong, or when they need advice on some particular game mechanics which they trust that I can help them with.
Yeah, it's like you're leading the next generation of game developers, and that's really I would imagine that'd be really intense doing a game jam every single month. Is that like a really intense process?
It is, and it's very interesting because sometimes that process start to feel like work because we have it every month. They lose the appeal of something that should be always be seen as something, how can I say, spontaneous. And it becomes part of the process. So we have to tweak them every single month and throw a spanner into the works every time to make sure that they feel fresh. Like last month, actually this month, we had our last game jam, which was with Troy Baker. So he was here at the studio and he was giving the ideas that the people were working on. So these things we do to keep different creative inputs from different people in different areas, but also to keep the game jam process itself fresh.
Wow, how long does the game jam last? Like just 2 days, you say?
Yeah, it's 2 days. We usually do on Thursdays and Fridays because most people sometimes they want to go into the weekend working on it, but generally it's 2 days.
Interesting. So, as CEO of running a company, what are common mistakes do you think most CEOs are making, even at a pro level?
Wow, okay, that's a big question. We make mistakes all the time. I think that the worst mistake you can make is not learn from your previous mistakes. It's because the art of learning anything in life is trying it many times, getting it wrong until you get it right. But once you get it right, or once you make an obvious mistake, like trying to ride a bike and going too fast, you don't do that again unless you want to get the same outcome, which is a negative one. So I think that there are lots of people who repeat the same mistake sometimes because that's how it was always done, right? Typical example when people start looking at games today and start thinking about, oh, I need a publisher for this game. Sometimes that's the right decision. Sometimes it's not. But if you go 20 years ago, that was the only decision you can have. So some people make these decisions today because that's how they were done 20 years ago. So you have to stay nimble and you have to stay creative and you start relearning things all the time because the context around you change. And if you don't learn from these new things that are rolling out, new experiences and new ways of doing things, it's very easy for you to get stuck in your ways and become irrelevant over time.
Definitely. And the game industry moves so fast, every also years. It just moves so fast, so you got to adapt. You got to adapt to the new process of how everything works.
Exactly. There's no other industry in the planet that moves as fast as the games industry because we are by nature early adopters of technology, right? It's like 5 years ago, there was no VR, although there was VR back in the 90s. I still have very old headsets from back then. 5 years ago, there was no VR. Today, everybody made a small VR game, and we are already pondering, is VR the future, yes or no? So we're already moving on to new things, right? And there has not ever been a moment in time that was so exciting to make games. Not even when it was the frontier land, the frontier times from, say, back in the 80s where we were discovering everything. Now it's much more exciting because there's so many new ways of doing games, so many new technologies like AI or VR or touch screens or digital distribution platforms, multiplayer for our hearts content and so on. But also we have the tools to get these games in the hands of every player. Right, there is no more gatekeeper holding us back like there was back then. We had to burn CDs or cassette tapes or floppy disks, whatever you want to do. These are all gone. So today, I think we are more limited by our creativity than ever before.
Yeah, and that's why I tell game developer it's a great time to make games because there's so many platforms, so many ways of making a game. What do you want to tell people that think that the market is just too oversaturated and so they're not motivated to make a game?
There's no such thing as oversaturation for good stuff, right? It's whatever is good will surface no matter what. I have two things to say for people who think that the market is oversaturated. The first one is that if you're doing something that is original, that is coming from your heart and is well executed, you will find your market. And the second one is that this is the mistake I see a lot of indies making, is that they consider marketing a separate thing from game production. And I don't understand why there is. Nobody would say that sound is separated from game production or animation is separated from game production, right? You start making a game thinking about these elements. You should start making a game thinking about how you're going to connect with your audience just as well. And that is marketing. So if you're not thinking about who's going to play your game, how you're going to get your game to the hands of your players from day one, just like you're thinking about how your game is going to look like, how it's going to play like, how it's going to sound like, you're making a big mistake. And then in the end, it's very easy for you to say, oh, the market is hyper-saturated. There's a lot of stuff in there, so nobody found my game. No, that's just an excuse for something that you did wrong along the way, I'm afraid.
Oh, yes, that's just an excuse. I like that. Such great. Yeah, you have to market your game because you need that attention from people. And the earlier you build a community, the better because they're going to follow you along the process. So you got to start that early for sure.
Yes, and today, look, you're making something for someone, right? You might be doing something that you would like to play yourself, and then you will find an audience that is like you and is going to play that. Or maybe you are making something for an audience that is different to you. And in that case, it's even more important for you to connect with this audience as soon as possible so you get their input, you get their help, you get their support along the way. It's hard work. Dealing with communities is hard work, particularly when things go wrong. Right, the history of games is littered with problems with communities, with trolls and people that really want to see the world burn. But thankfully, they are a minority. And if you are open and honest with the people who are supporting you, they can help you silence that minority as well. So it's just a matter of connecting with your audience as soon as possible and just enjoying the fact that they are helping you build something that they should love to play.
Oh yeah, be transparent with your audience for sure. Now let's take this on a more personal level, and we're gonna take it a bit to like a dark side, I guess you could say. What was the worst moment of your career? That one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and tell us that personal story.
Oh man, okay. I have seen a lot of dark stuff.
Oh yeah.
uh, Let me think. It's not such a thing as the worst of my career, because the most recent ones are always the worst, right? We when time goes by, you think to look back and soften the reality of what went on and romanticize that, you know what, it wasn't that bad. This is bad. So every time a game go offline or something breaks on a live game and players cannot interact with it for some reason, or they're interacting with it but not enjoying it in a particular way as you were expecting them to, that's a punch to the gut. And anyone who cares about what they're doing, right? We are not making it easy for ourselves right now with Worlds Adrift. It's one of the most ambitious games that I have ever heard of, because it's multiplayer physics on a persistent world where the community itself built each one of the islands who are floating on the sky there. They are flying from each one of those islands in ships that they made it themselves inside the game. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that game from design perspective, from a technology perspective, but most importantly from a balance perspective, right? And when any one of those things break, and they break often, it is something that affects you emotionally very hard if you care about what you're doing. And this is the process which I'm going through right now. It is one that I have to fight with the fact that some of the things of the game are not right because the game is still in development, and some of the people in early access experiencing it don't understand what early access is about. Still games in development, because not every game in early access is in development, right? There are some games in early access which are ready to go out of it. So the expectation there is slightly different from what it should be. So that is probably right now the one that I will recollect as the darker experience of my career. But I'm quite sure I had much worse days in the past. It's just that they are in the past, they start to fade.
See, now that's the thing. Gamers, they don't realize how hard it is to make these games. And what can we game devs like take away from your experience? As in, how can we communicate with gamers, like especially with the early access, that hey, it's we're still working on this. Try to keep them calm. Be transparent. Like, what can you tell gamers to, I guess, not take their heat or something?
That's the thing. They should know how difficult it is to make. It's not their job, right? It's they are players. They are there to have fun. They are there to buy our games and enjoy them. So I don't hold them to account and say, oh, you don't know how hard to make a game is, and therefore you are saying something that doesn't reflect reality. I cannot expect that from them, right? They're not game developers. They cannot know how many restless nights we have, how many times we cry over each other's shoulder in order to get something done the way it's meant to be done. Because making games is hard. It's very, very, very hard. Anyone who tried to make a good game knows that. So I think there's nothing to educate the players, particularly because the problem that if you want to be particular about early access, which is what I got myself talking into right now, is the fact that the game developers did it themselves. Steam came up with a great idea. Let's make an environment where games in development can be given to players, and players go with you during that journey to make the game better, debugging it and adding any features they want. And then when you're ready, you go out in early access and sell it to the masses, right? And then game developers starting to subvert it and use early access as a marketing tool, so they can have two launches, one in early access and one out of early access. And they take to early access games which are completely done, right? So that was shifted the players' expectations. And so it's not their fault. It's our fault. It's the game developers' fault. It is, man. It is. I cannot I cannot I cannot blame the players for this. This is our own doing, I'm afraid, as an industry.
And I completely understand where you're coming from as well, because it's us that put the game out there in that status the way it is. And if a player finds bugs that we missed, it's it's on us to go and fix that or make sure it was bug free before we shipped it or something like that. So I completely understand where you're coming from, and as game does, we should take more responsibility and do a better job at, I guess, communicating and also, just putting out a better game before it gets out to the mass. It's a lot.
Yeah, but it's not always about that. Sometimes you want to put out a game which is in a very early stage, and it's fine to do so as long as you communicate to the community properly. The problem is that we expected early access to do that for us, and it doesn't do that anymore. So we have to do it ourselves. People who do it very well right now is the guys from Clay, who do Don't Starve and so on. Oxygen not included keeps on telling you every screen that the game is in development and things will go wrong. So it's a reminder of every single time that you are navigating through that game from launch to the game experience that, dude, this game is not ready, calm down.
Oh, that is a great way to let players know just at the beginning of every game. Hey, this game is still buggy. Just prepare for that. That's how you tell gamers what to expect. Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
Exactly. There you go.
What do you think is like the worst advice do you see or hear being told in your world?
Not bad advice as such, because first, the game industry itself, it is a very good industry. I'm yet to find another industry where professionals share so openly their mistakes and their successes, how much effort and time is put into telling others what you did and how you did so they can learn from it, either for better or worse. So in general, the games industry share a lot. Mm-hmm. Now, the bad advice is the advice that gets out of context, right? When someone has one particular experience for a specific reason, and they take that for gospel and start to propagate that as that is how it will work for everybody in any circumstance, right? And that is always a recipe for disaster, because that's not how the world works, let alone games development. Things might go wrong with you because of a particular set of circumstances that might not be replicated by anyone else, because they did just one variable differently and they achieved to a different end result, right? So when people say, oh, you know what, the best way to market your game is to go to Kickstarter first, and then you go to Steam Greenlight, and then you go straight into early access, and that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it for that guy, not for every game and not for every studio. So I think that the worst type of advice that we get from the games industry is when someone poses something as gospel, particularly when you are on stage on big conferences. Sometimes that happens. But I never got an advice worse than someone telling me, oh, this cannot be done.
Oh.
Right? Never. Every time someone told me this cannot be done, I found out that they were wrong. And that I have heard many times throughout my career, someone for some reason saying that X is impossible. I tried, it didn't work. You shouldn't do this. This is the worst kind of advice you can give anyone.
That's like such a downer. I would hate to hear something like that where, it just, I hate when people say you can't do something in general, and, it's like they're trying to put you down or something. Or they're not doing it purposely because maybe they felt themselves. But like you say, like it could be different from you. You probably know how to do it better. You probably have a better team to do it, like, or make it happen. Like it just, like you say, it's so different. So each advice is like, you just have to be careful with what you hear out there.
Yeah, precisely. They're not doing it because they want to harm you or they want to cause damage or anything like that. They honestly believe it cannot be done. But if you believe that something cannot be done, give it some flavor. Tell, look, I tried to do it like this and it didn't work for me. So at least try to do it in another way.
Yeah, you have a different perspective when you hear different advices. Now, in terms of game development, personally, what do you think was like the biggest waste of time that we should cut off from game development?
Politics.
Oh.
Politics.
Yeah.
Politics within teams. Making games is a very hard endeavor. Right? We have to pay attention to everything that's going around you, what your peers are doing with the work that you created, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. So if you're not completely open-minded to how to do your work so you can help those around you, you're making it wrong. And nothing impairs that more than a team that plays on politics. And this is usually the larger the team, the more likely that the team will incur on these things. Meaning that, I don't like that guy, or I think that that guy is doing it wrong, but I will not tell him, or something like that, right? That is human elements that if you don't actively remove from the ecosystem, they will manifest themselves. Let alone, people are political by nature, right? That's how we as a society evolved, from tribalism to our current structures of hierarchies. So unchecked, that permeates the development, and the only thing that can come out of that is miscommunication and waste of time. The more open-minded, the more transparent and collaborative a team you can make, particularly when giving feedback to each other, not taking personally, that is the key to performance.
Do you do anything in general? Like, how do you encourage your teammates to be more open-minded with each other?
Yeah, I do. Particularly what I do is that I take advice openly and willingly all the time. So if someone thinks that I'm doing something wrong, I am the first one to thank them for telling me that I'm doing something wrong, and I change if I'm actually doing something wrong. Sometimes I'm not. Most of the times I am, but sometimes I'm not. So showing them that it's okay to be wrong, and above all, it's okay to criticize each other on a manner that is productive and positive is key, right? So if someone tells you something that is aimed to improve how you should do things, you should thank them for it and not feel personally attacked or something like that. And by doing it yourself, you set the example. Now, more proactively, as a leader, if you see people who are set on their ways, that they can only operate like that, and you have decided that your company cannot operate like that, you remove those people from the team. This is something which is linked to personality. So ideally, you are screening for these things before you hire or join a team that has those characteristics. But if you make a mistake and you bring an element into your team that is prone to live off of other people's failures or criticize people with the aim to establish themselves as above them, that kind of stuff, then you have to remove that person as fast as you can from the team before it causes greater damage.
Wow, Henrique, you sound like an amazing CEO. Can I work for you?
Of course, my friend. We are recruiting. Come over.
Yes. Also, now that you're more experienced and better, what do you think was like the best investment you've made? And it can be investment of money, time, or energy. How did you decide to make that investment?
Look, this is actually a no-brainer. The best investment that I make is the time that I put into finding great people to work with. There's nothing that I can do which is more valuable than spending my time finding very good talent with very good personalities to join the team. That's by far pays off.
So you take I'm curious, how long does the interview process take, or how does the screening process take? Is it okay for us to ask that?
Yeah, sure. Usually we have 3 to 4 interviews at the studio before we make a decision if the person is the right fit or not. But also that starts with a pre-scanning of the person's background. We usually prefer reaching out to people that we admire than to wait to look to strike and they come to our door. So most of the time we will be looking at what are the games that we are talking about, what are the stuff that we have seen, that we have played, which is very interesting. Who is the person behind that? Would they be ready to join us? Would they be willing to join us? And this is an ongoing work that requires a few hours a day of you dedicating yourself to that. This is by far the best time investment that I can make.
Wow, people, you have to have the right people in the team, and it takes time. You know, like you say, it takes time to find the right people, and if they're not the right fit, you got to let them go. And that's another thing that takes a lot of courage, I guess, and time. You trying to find a way to let someone go. I heard that it's a good skill to fire people that just don't fit with your team.
Look, it's never easy to fire anyone,
yeah.
Right? And I would much rather never have to do it at all. But the bottom line is, if someone, for any reason, is not fitting in within the team, and sometimes that reason has nothing to do with the person, has to do with the team as well. Sometimes the team is the one to blame for that fit not to take place. But bottom line is, it's better for everyone. You don't want to be working in a place where you're not performing at your best for whatever reason that is. in the same way that the place doesn't want that person to be there because they will be hindering the performance, be that creative output or be that execution, you name it. All those things will be affected by someone at the wrong place at the wrong time, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's tough, but you gotta do it. What was the greatest idea you had to date, like an aha moment?
Oh, okay. I think it was shifting the production, the creative process of Bossa from the traditional, I had this amazing idea, everybody's going to work on this, to every idea is terrible unless proven good. And that has made us a completely different kind of beast, right? Instead of someone somewhere having an idea, coming up through the paces of convincing everybody that idea is good, we start a project, put a lot of people in it, and then 6 months down the line, a lot of people don't believe in that project anymore, but they are working on it because nobody has the courage to say that we should stop doing it. We now have a completely different mechanic, which is everything that we have been playing is shit. I don't want to play this anymore. Oh, this is not good. Oh my God, this is special. It's terrible to play, but look at it. This is awesome. We should do this. Because when you do that, you already have a team that they know that they're working on something that's going to be successful, right? They don't need to see the game realized in order to be convinced that what they're working on is good. They already saw elements of it on the prototype coming out of the game jam that basically informs them that the game is good. And if you go one step further, like we do, in that we validate these ideas with the players as soon as we can possibly do. For instance, Surgeon Simulator, 48 hours after it was done, there was a downloadable demo for it that YouTubers start to play with and became very, very popular very fast. So the team working on Surgeon Simulator from day one, they knew they were working on a success, right? That empowers the team into another level of commitment and belief in what they're doing that you cannot get otherwise.
I feel like if when people listen to this episode, they will adopt your company style of getting ideas. The game jams, I have no doubt in my mind people are going to start adopting it. That's an awesome way to get ideas flowing from like every single member of the companies. That's so cool.
Now, there's so many other side effects to it that most people don't realize until they start doing it. I'll give you a typical example. On a typical studio, right, where you are supposed to work on somebody else's ideas and all the ideas come from the top. What you will find is that the most talented people, they will have great ideas in their heads, right? But they cannot execute on those ideas. Oh, I have this great concept for a game, but I cannot make it here in the studio. So two things will happen. One, they will hold that idea back from the studio, which the studio could benefit from, if it is indeed a good idea. But two, that person at some point will leave the company to execute that idea without knowing if that idea is good or bad. And during the time that they are at the studio, they are not giving their 100% because they have their idea in the back of their mind. On a scheme like this, where every month you can get ideas out in the wild and see if it works, you just detoxify yourself from that. And in the process of doing so, you learn that not every idea you come up with is good. It transforms you from a believer into a much more practical, creative guy. So it has so many side effects, even to staff retention and commitment to projects, that I cannot see any better way of doing it right now. Maybe there is, and I will come up with it at some point. I will discover it from somebody else. But for now, this is probably the best I can think of.
Yeah, because you're giving your team like the opportunity to express their ideas, and also if it turns out a bad idea, you're saving them the opportunity from making it in the future. So it's like it's a huge benefit to both parties. Yeah, that's a great way to see it.
Yeah.
With the game industry booming now, what are you most excited about today?
I'm excited about AI like never before. The reason being, I'm not talking about, by the way, AI that makes a bot smarter or does better pet finding or achieves a headshot better than anyone else. This thing has been done forever, right? What I'm talking about is AI as a form to understand how you play and what would be your ideal gameplay scenario. A little bit like what Left 4 Dead did with the game director back in the day, but taken to a new level because now AI can learn from you on real time. So the kind of things that is possible to make with that, if we take it seriously, is mind-blowing. I cannot think of all the possibilities myself, and anything that I cannot think of the entirety of the possibilities excites me.
Is there like a particular game that uses that type of AI?
Not that I'm aware of, and that makes it even more exciting yet.
Oh, you could be the first one to create it in
Yeah,
the future.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of advancements in AI going on right now, like speech recognition, processing of images. There is a lot of AI going on in analytics and trying to understand why people like a game or they don't like a game. But there's very little done right now in terms of adjusting the gameplay experience for each different type of players. And this is, I think, is a frontier that I'm very keen to explore, and I hope that other people also explore.
I'm really curious. It's like once gaming have reached the graphic threshold, they're going to be more focused on other stuff like AI maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. We have been improving our ability to push vertexes for a long time now, with GPUs advancing and CPUs advancing the way they have in the past 20 years. Um, we still have to bridge the uncanny valley, and that might be something that is a few years away still. But at some point, we will have to do more with games than we are doing right now. Otherwise, they will become stale. Thankfully, this has happened very few times in the history of games industry, right? The consequences at those particular times were very bad, but we were able to recover them ourselves and understand that if we stop innovating, we stop being relevant. And I hope that after it happened, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, we have learned from that and won't do it again.
Definitely. I believe the game industry will just continually evolve for a long time. What is the one game that influenced you the most, and why?
Hmm. I have been influenced by a lot of games at different times. Pong was the game that got me started, so I think that influenced me a lot. But the one that showed me the possibilities of what could be achieved was Elite by David Braben and Ian Bell. That game, 35 years ago now, that game showed me that you could be free to do whatever you want, to go wherever you want. It was the first sandbox game that I can remember of. And just the sheer size of the universe, a whole bunch of galaxies that game created, that you could fly to each one of those star systems and land in planets and find out they were inhabited by different creatures. They were all procedurally generated. That kind of blew my mind, and it was the first time that I realized that games can be boundless. They can be alternate versions of reality. Of course, they didn't reflect reality in its detail level back in the day because we didn't have technology to do so, and we still lack it today. But from a concept point of view, that game presented the proposition that you can make alternate realities. You can make entire worlds where people would like to spend most of their time in, and I decided I will become a game developer myself.
Oh yeah, and to take a step further, VR might be the next step where you're actually in that world in like in a sandbox type of game. So, it, I just can't wait to see how advanced the gaming is in the future. It's going to be really interesting to see, especially in the sandbox game where you could just travel anywhere you want.
I know, right? There's so much to be experienced in these stealing games, which that's why I love working in this industry. That not one day goes by that I have a justification to be bored.
Oh, that was actually the next question. I was going to ask you, why do you love being a part of the video game industry?
It's the industry that brings about the most different set of skills with the aim of creating a single thing together. You don't see parallels on it in any other industry, not even films or so on. We daily basis we deal with people who are very good at coding, people who are very good at images, people who are very good at sound, uh, and it's just refreshing to see all those different ways of looking at life, all those different ways of thinking about how to do things, just clashing together to create something unique. That is what really excites me. And of course, the end result, right, is to make people have fun, to experience new emotions with what you have created. The kick that you get out of doing that successfully is incomparable. Is something that keeps you going through the wars if you have to go through it.
Yeah, it's just such a great feeling when you make people happy. It's a real feeling. Awesome. The show isn't over yet, Game Dev. We have reached a crunch time. First, I want to quickly mention I'm doing a free giveaway with a Crew Brush, the best marketplace for digital art resources, to give 2 lucky winners $50 of in-store credit each. All you have to do is send me proof that you share my podcast by emailing me to tony@gamedevloader.com, or you could just tag me on social media. This giveaway ends November 12th, so don't miss this opportunity. And if you know anyone that uses art asset, let them know about this as well. For disclosure, I am not getting paid for this. I personally reached out to them, and they were so cool to give us this awesome gift. So you can check out my website to learn more. Enrique, are you ready to crush it and release the show?
I hope so.
What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
At the time, just the ability to get my hands into hardware that I could use to make games myself. That was the only thing holding me back.
Currently, there's no excuse for anybody to get started now. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Do it. Do it all the time. That's my personal advice. I see people, you will never see someone saying, I want to be a singer who have not sung a music before. But I do see people who say, I want to be a game developer and a game designer who have never done a game or mod before. So there you go.
Back it up with action. You got to back it up.
Exactly.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Stay hungry. Never take no for an answer. And go after things that other people are not seeing. If you're working on things that people are not paying attention to, it's because you are on to something special.
Ooh, let me ask you this. So some people, they lose that hunger along the way. Like maybe they get demotivated because the game that they end up working on is too hard, or they just, for whatever reason, they lose that motivation. How can they keep that hunger? How can they keep it going?
Look at the end prize. Look at why you're doing this. It's worth it because you are doing something to make people happy. Now, if you're working on something that you know is not going to make people happy, you only have yourself to blame. Because the gaming industry is an industry that hires all the time. You don't have any excuse to be rooted to a job unless you're working on something you like.
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually, that's my goal right now. Like, I'm in a process of, I'm in Houston, and Houston's not a big game industry. But I live right next to Austin, and Austin's a huge game industry, and I'm trying to slowly make that transition there, just to find a job there or work in the game industry. And the podcast is probably going to be one of my ways to join that game industry one way or another. And I'm taking action, I'm doing things, I'm developing my own game. Yeah, I'm doing what it takes to join the game industry, and there's no excuse. There's just no excuse.
Exactly, and some of the times when someone asks you during an interview or a process, etc., have you made a game? Have you made a mod? Have you made anything? Can I see it? It doesn't matter actually the quality of what you have done. It doesn't have to be the best game ever. That's not about it. It's about initiative, and it's about having gone through the hardship that it is to put that together. That already puts you above 99% of the people who are competing with you for the same thing. You already show that you are committed to do it, and you had to show that you have been through the process and you know at least in general terms what are the challenges you will have to face on a daily basis. And you're still committed, so okay, I know you want to do it.
I love what you just pointed out. Like you said, you do not have to have your first game or a quality game. You don't have to have a great game as long as you showed that you actually made a game. That's credibility. That's like enough credibility right there. So I love that you pointed that out. How has a failure set you up for a later success?
You learn from it. You got to learn from it. Success is built on the back of failure.
Learn from it, guys. Learn from it. What resources should we game devs use?
Every resource you can get your hands on. There are several very good resources on YouTube about game design. If you are into development, there's so many sources for game development advice. Nothing beats the ability to discuss with someone more experienced than you. So if you can get hold of a mentor or someone who can swap some ideas with you, that's probably the most rewarding source of information that you will have. If you have to resort to books, I'm very partial to A Theory of Fun by Haf Koster, and A Book of Lenses is another book that I like.
Ooh, I would definitely link those up. And now this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world, and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of, and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on a path to become successful in the game industry?
I would download a game that I like, and I will make a mod for it. And I will work with the community of that game in making that mod very, very fun, successful. That would set me up to the role that I have taken myself, right? Just look at some of the most popular games in history. They have been mods first. Counter-Strike, Dota, PlayerUnknown's Battleground, AZ, all these games were mods. Why are they so popular? It's because they were shown, because of their own nature of being mods, they were shown to the players very early on in the development cycle, and they counted on player feedback all the way through. So that's what I would do. I will use that laptop to build a mod on a game that has some following, and I will use that game's audience to criticize and help me make that mod the best possible mod that I could make. And once I have done that, I'm set for life on the industry.
Ooh, that's a new one. I never heard someone starting off with a mod. And yeah, like you say, stick with that community, build up that mod, and it could end up being like Dota or Counter-Strike, which are huge, huge games now.
Exactly.
We have reached the end, Henrique. Go ahead and give us a parting piece of guidance in how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Well, never stop learning. That would be my advice. Don't let people knock you out. Just keep on going on what you believe, because the things that are hard are the things that are worth doing. And if you want to hook me up on the web, I am at Olifiers on Twitter and at Olifiers everywhere. That's one of the advantages of having a unique surname.
Henrique, it's been a pleasure. Game Dust, make sure to hit him up. He just gave so much value bombs today. It was so awesome interviewing you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And for that, we are truly grateful, Henrique, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Game Dust, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I am truly inspired by Henrique and the way he leads his team. It is so cool, and one day when I make my own team, I'm definitely going to model after him. You can check out my website at GameDevLoadout.com for all the show notes and resources. If you want to listen to more inspiring stories and help the show grow, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your fellow peers. In the next episode, I interview Michael Sweet, an associate professor at Berklee College of Music, and we talk about sound and the video game of music scores. So that's going to be really awesome and interesting. Until then, keep on making great games, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.